Okay, so this right here, this was a work of art. Let's talk about it. Welcome back to Getting Caught Up with Upcoming Author. So today I'm reviewing Marvel's Paragon collection for Chris Claremont. If you don't know anything about Chris Claremont, the X-Men as we know them today would not exist without him. At the time that Chris took over the X-Book, the X-Men were actually one of Marvel's worst books. They were failing, and no one really cared about the character except for like an obscure few. So when he took over with Giant Size X-Men #1, that's where we get all the characters that we know of today, which of course would be Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, Wolverine actually becoming a mutant, and all those lovely little details. With this series, this Paragon collection is a collection of some of his best stories that obviously defined the X-Men for a total of 17 years when he was writing them. So obviously you had the Phoenix Saga, Days of Futures Past, the Wolverine series that he did with Frank Miller. All these wonderful stories are collected in this book. And it's beautifully just designed and got the gold filigree. It's gorgeous. I love it. Why is this important to me? Well, everyone is sitting here watching X-Men 97, which I have not watched yet because of the fact that I'm still trying to go through the original series all over again. I am only into comics because of the X-Men. Most of the people that do actually know me in real life know that I became a comic book fan because of the X-Men and Spider-Man, and both the originated animated series that were on years ago. And I love telling this story. I love the Phoenix Saga so much with a huge passion. My parents initially recorded the Phoenix Saga on the VHS tape for me back in the day, and I rewatched that saga so much, I actually destroyed the VHS tape. Jean Grey, Phoenix, is my favorite Marvel character, just hands down. So a few years ago, when Marvel announced they were going to do a Paragon collection of Chris's best stories that I actually haven't read myself, it was only the stuff I knew from the TV show. I was like, I had to be a part of this. And I spent way too much money. But it was worth it. Besides getting the chance to actually read the stories, the best thing I loved about this collection was the fact of actually getting to see why Chris is heralded as one of the X-Men's best writers. Very much, in my opinion, to what it being done technically with the Kurioka age. It's just, Chris knows how to tell a story. You could definitely tell Chris was a writer who wanted to make sure he painted the scene, not just because it was a comic and you can see the pictures from the wonderful art that's in there, but because of the words you were reading. He gives a lot of detail. He goes back and forth. The actual narrator monologues that go through the different panels, especially when the X teams are separated and stuff like that. It's just wonderful and showing like the inner workings of the writer as he tells this phenomenal story. And the best thing to me that actually really came out of it was the fact that Chris spends a lot of time looking at the inner dialogue of all the characters. So as the characters are actually moving and talking and doing a lot of the actions in the story, they're also having a lot of thought bubbles on what they're doing, why they're going to do it, what they hope to gather. This shows very strongly in the Phoenix Saga and how everybody feels about Jean and when she's on trial for destroying a planet and everything. Like it's wonderful just how much Chris puts in the detail, not only painting the world, but making sure you understand who these characters are. He says this about the Wolverine miniseries that he did. The point with that story, as ideally with the best of my stories, I hope, is even though they wear skin-tight suits, even though they have superpowers, these characters are, at bedrock, as human as we are. If I can build that bridge in terms that the reader can relate it to in real life, I figure, bingo. Chris wonderfully encapsulates that these aren't just superheroes, and in my opinion, very much really fits into the mold of what Stan Lee wanted to do with comics anyway. He wanted superheroes to actually have real life problems. It's one of the reasons why Spider-Man is such a great character, because that's who Stan Lee created. Someone who actually goes through the struggles of life, even though they can like lift a tank over their head. It shines so much more with the X-Men because the X-Men have always been about a group of people who have been oppressed, a group of people who are outsiders. And because they are outsiders, the world hates them. And he takes that idea and then molds it so beautifully as he helps you understand who these characters are beyond just their abilities. I clearly did not get a chance to actually read everything that Chris has ever written in that 17-year long run, but these are some of his best stories, and I can see why the X-Men are who they are today. And if I ever get the chance to meet him, I would love to tell him that I am who I am today because of what he did with the X-Men. And because of how impacted I am by what Chris did with the X-Men. Like, keep in mind, I've never actually shown you guys anything from my collection that I actually have, but I actually have the first appearance of Jean Grey as the Phoenix, which is X-Men 101, signed by Chris. And then I also have X-Men #1, which is the highest selling comic book of all time. Also not only signed by Chris, but also signed by Jim Lee. And if you didn't know, Jim Lee's design in the X-Men runs that he did with Chris are the designs that we end up seeing in the actual X-Men cartoon that we all know and love. Reading this book, it makes me wonder why the era that was Chris Claremont and what he put into his stories, why that just went away. He spent time building the world with his dialogue. Yes, you're getting a comic, you're going to have pictures, and the artists are going to do a wonderful job, but Chris literally was an artiste in the way he built the narrative. And there's a part of me that wishes that comics would get back to that. I think, at least for the X-Men, the closest we've gotten is the Krakoa age, right? The age of Krakoa, everything that's been going on since that was built up in, 2019 now? And now it's ending. So we'll see what the next series of writers brings for the X-Men. But that's it for me in terms of this Paragon collection. I know not everyone has read this, but I wanted to review it. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of Chris Claremont's X-Men, if you know anything about them. What do you think about the original X-Men 90s cartoon? Have you watched X-Men 97? I'm in like season 3, I believe, right now of the original series. So once I get that taken care of, then yes, I will go ahead and watch 97. 97 is releasing episode at a time, so I'll have plenty of time to get caught up. But as always, I want to thank you for coming to my page. I am Upcoming Author. Thank you for getting caught up with me, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.